Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 64 breakdown for the European finals that happened this past weekend, and a couple of things before we get started. One, sorry for the drop in quality for this video specifically. I'm literally in LA right now getting ready for the North American finals, which is this upcoming weekend, and also normally I like to get all the deck lists before doing a video for this, but with the time constraint of, the North American finals coming up, and just the availability of deck lists, I've kind of done as best as I can right now. I'll continue to update this website page with more deck lists as I get them, but it is a little bit incomplete. But we do have the full top 16, which I think is really a good chunk, and then a good amount of the top 32 in 64. So I also do want to shout out Raid and Trade for not only running the event, but also for making a lot of this data available, including like the leaders and for the top 64, but also for the total leaders. They streamed it on Twitch too, which you guys can find a link on my page here as well. And then for all the deck lists that I got outside of the top 16, I want to do a shout out to Orange Samurai, who did do a just has a lot of lists on his Twitter. He's been going through it. He's been getting a lot of the deck lists published there. So I really do appreciate that. And I guess half the deck list for this page would not exist without his Twitter. So I do appreciate that. He was also at the event. I hope he had a good time. And I will be seeing him this weekend too, which is going to be fun. So anyways, that is kind of what we got. And so we have this entire breakdown for this event. And for it, this was 2,560 players. So one of the, if not largest, One Piece events ever held in the history of the card game. It was 12 rounds of Swiss into a top 64 cut, best of 3. And again, if you guys want to see the live stream, they're all linked here. I'm not sure how long they're going to be on Twitch, and I'm not sure if they're going to be re-uploaded to YouTube permanently somewhere, but this is what we have right now. And so for the top 64, we do have 28 Sakazukis, with 6 of them in the top 8, 4 of them in the top 4. 11 Zoros, 10 Enels, 6 Katakuris, 5 Purple Luffys, 1 Nami, 1 Star Deck 10 Luffy, 1 Star Deck 10 Law, and 1 copy of Edward Newgate. So we are seeing a couple of the usual suspects, but it's really interesting to see Zoro as the second most popular leader in this breakdown. It was a deck that I personally kind of wrote off as not as viable in this format, but it did very well for this weekend. I'm not sure if it was a combination of people not expecting it or people having some, special tech specifically in Sakazuki, which, if it's the best matchup that you have, it's a good one to have, even though some of the other ones are middling. I will personally say, as an Enel player, I love playing against Zoro because it's a very, very free matchup in my experience with it, but I do think it can have some good matchups, and we'll talk about the deck a little bit later as well. So interesting, a couple of the singletons, and we did have a Nami in the top 8, which we'll talk about, as well as a Purple Luffy in top 8. No yellow in top 8, only in top 16 as well. And then for the total breakdown, we do see the general curve of the top 4 leaders taking just over 75% of the total entrants, which was usually what I expect. And I think they took just around 75% of the top 64 as well. Just the Zoro kind of skews it a little bit, but just about there. And then, so a good amount of Sakazukis, Katakuris, Enels, and Luffys. Zoro was the 5th most popular, Newgate following right behind, and then a bit of a mishmash of other decks here that I've mentioned and was released by Raid and Trade, so I do appreciate that as well. So, but honestly, a moderately good variety. I know that Sakazuki was the the deck to beat, and it did not get beaten this weekend, but we'll see, or this past weekend, and we'll see what happens in North America as well before I develop maybe some more thoughts about the deck in general for this metagame. Anyways, we're going to go over the top placing list for each one of these leaders, and technically the top 2 for Sakazuki, because we're going to look at first and second place, but we have Fabian here with their copy of Sakazuki, and this one's a little bit more low to the ground than I usually like to see. It's there's no 10 drops. The highest cost card in this deck is Borsalino, and it's just very, very fast and just kind of prioritized on, I think, more aggression than just complete control. Just more, I guess, tempo. Tempo is probably the better word for it, where we really prioritize our Rebecca's and Sabas. There's a lot of matchups where, specifically Kaido never gets to see play, which I think Zoro is one of those for sure. It's just a little bit too, late game for a deck like Zoro that likes to just push aggressively very, very often. So I think that makes sense. We see 3 Kuzans. We see our Rebecca, Rob Lucci, unsurprising, and then 3 copies of the 3-drop Hina, which I still don't know how I feel about this card, but with no Kaidos in this, you do have a little bit more space than I think normally you have in this deck, and it's just a really interesting build there. So this is the first place list. It's from Fabian. I don't have a lot to say about Sakazuki because we've been seeing it quite a bit, but we also do have Hrvoje's second place list for it as well. And I do want to just go over because it's first and second, and both these players will be representing Europe in the Japan finals later this year as well. But we do have this list, which this one I'd say is more akin to the one that I'm used to. The 10-drop Kaido here I like the card in general because I do like to play against like a lot of yellow players. I do think like against purple it can be kind of dead in hand too, but you don't necessarily need a purple Luffy matchup decide. I feel like Sakazuki just kind of wins that matchup more times than not. We have like the one copy of Bart, which I like as an additional copy of a 3-cost 2k counter that Rebecca can find, and it's a blocker, which is nice. And then one copy of Ice Age, which most people play too, but I get like why. Honestly, like Hina is just such a good card for giving the minus cost and getting stuff in range that Ice Age isn't needed as much. And that's kind of the build here. So there's a lot of Sakazuki builds on my website for this event. So if you guys want to check them out, go for it. I did also see a lot of copies of Sanji's Pilaf sprinkled throughout some of those lists, which I'm not saying is a bad card. It's just a card that I don't see as often, and I felt like I saw more often for this event specifically in comparison. So especially because I think a lot of people who are running it were not playing 10-drop Kaido. So for having like a quote-unquote mini version of the card to get more cycle and only having like a 3-cost investment, I think is a good middle ground. So it's an interesting choice there. But congratulations to both of them, and good luck in the World Finals in Japan later this year. Next up, we have our purple Luffy player. So this is Claudio, who got top 8 with this build here. And this is honestly pretty close to a build that I've been running. He does have the one copy of the page 1 from set 1, which I know was pretty popular on stream as well. Has the activate main once per turn for Dawn -1. This character can attack your opponent's active characters during this turn. So being able to attack into stuff is great. I think like kind of the bonus little effect is that it's a Dawn minus effect that you get to use on attack, which means that you can do something like you can play Useless Captain Kid if on the next turn, and then you can attack with this, do the Dawn minus, and then Kid gets the Dawn back. So something like that is kind of nice for this deck. We also do have like a couple copies of Miss All Sunday, 4 of them to be precise, and then our top end of no copies of 7-drop Kid, which I haven't been liking as much in my decks either, and then also 4 of the 9-drop Kaido. So this is normally what I like. I think there's a lot of games that this is the card that you want to get to as fast as you can. You are able to just pressure your opponent. If you're able to ramp up correctly, there's not a lot your opponent can do to get rid of this card easily outside of Sakazuki. And being able to pop a 6 or less, which assumingly your opponent just played a 6-cost last turn anyways, you can get rid of it pretty easy. So I do like that. Only 3 copies of Poly, which I personally think is the most important card in the deck, just because the ramp is really great. Being able to be on 5 Dawn, go to 7, 8, and then go to 10 at the end of the turn, your next turn, I think is fantastic. There's also no copies of Magellan in this build, which I don't dislike. I know that it is a card that helps out the yellow matchup a lot, but I also think that the deck still naturally wins the matchup without Magellan, so swapping it for Miss All Sunday is not terrible in my idea either, just because it does get the ramp still. And with Miss All Sunday and Poly, you're able to guarantee you get some good ramp and get to 10 as soon as possible, and with some card draws and some interaction, which I think is great. So not much more to say. Congratulations to Claudio for their top 8 finish with purple Luffy. And then next up we have Nami with Ramtin, and I'm saying this without any no shade or anything, but this is just the Nami build that we've been seeing. It is the one that was topping OPO4. There are no OPO5 cards, which is not a surprise to me in any way, but I do think this is still just it's the way you build this deck, right? I think there are different ways that people have been trying to crack it with some new cards in OPO5, but generally, I think this is still like just the most consistent way to build this deck, and just go for it. So I don't have much to say about it. It is, I think, a strong deck, especially, I don't know, like alternate win conditions and specifically mill decks. If your opponent isn't expecting it, they're going to do better. And personally, based off some of the games and matches that I've seen, I think this is a deck that a lot of people might not be, on the up and up of how to play around it, or at what the best way to get the most value from, your Dawn and the pressure to play around their counter cards. So in that kind of format, there you do get, that free advantage, I feel like, just because people forget or don't know how to play against the deck either. So I think Ramtin did a really great job, and congratulations for their top 8 finish with Nami. Next up, we do have Zoro here, so we have actually 2 copies in the top 16. We have Fabio's as well as Jose's build between the two, and the real big difference between the two is that Fabio is running the 9-drop Newgate in their build, which I think was a card that was pretty standard in Zoro when OPO2 came out, and then was kind of like an okay card. When it was restricted to 1, it was like sometimes a 1 of for it. And now that we're back at 4 copies of it, people just aren't playing Newgate as much. I think this is kind of more of a rare pick. It does let you go like late game and become a 7k leader very easily, but it does kind of end your tempo in a lot of ways. But I do agree, like some decks just can't get rid of this card if played on curve, which means you get a lot of free advantage from that too. So it's not like a terrible pick. It's just kind of, I think, more of a tech choice in this current meta. And then other than that, we do have like the idea of like this 1-drop army that Magra, Makino are able to boost up and go from there. We aren't playing Otama, I think, in either build. Yeah, no Otamas, which I don't think is too crazy. We don't have as much, we're not playing Fire Fist right now, which makes sense. We are playing Buggy in both versions with not that many events. We're only playing 10 events for each of them, I think. Yeah, which is a little bit wild to see that Buggy still makes the cut. But it is a 1-drop 3k, so that's fine. Nico Robin's also just a really great card for getting rid of Rebecca specifically, so making that Sakazuki matchup even better for you is good. And obviously the Jabba Jambes and Luffy's, because you do, Sakazuki specifically likes to play a lot of blockers. There's a lot of other decks, like Purple Luffy specifically, will just kind of play out a Eustace Kid and a Queen and hope they're enough. And so being able to have both these cards to bypass those blockers and push for game, I think is a very, very good end condition for you too. So I don't have much more to say. I think Zoro is in a good spot against some decks. I think Sakazuki can be winnable. I think that specifically like Purple Luffy, if they don't find their pieces, you can be very aggressive and push them down and just make it so they don't, like, you make them a vanilla leader because they don't want to take cards from their own life when you're facing such aggression that Zoro can kind of put out too. So these are the builds, and congratulations to Fabio and Jose for their finishes there. All right, next up we're in the Enel block, and we actually have 4 builds I'm going to look at. There are 3 that got tied in top 16, which I'm going to go over real quickly. And there's also Thomas, who got top 32 with a Big Mom version of Enel, which of the deck list that I have, I believe is the only Big Mom version that we can go over. And I want to just kind of go over both real quick. So first we're going to go over the Sky Island builds, and this one's honestly pretty similar to the one that I'm running. So this one's a Donut's version of it. We also have 2 versions, or 1 version from Matheos and also 1 copy from Jimmy as well. So this is honestly the deck that I've been playing a lot in preparation for this event, and I think it's very strong in a lot of ways. And honestly, all 3 of these are doing pretty much the same thing that I'm doing, in the sense that, like 4-drop Katakuri, which I know a lot of people don't like this card, and I didn't like this card for a long time, but I think it's important in some matchups. Just being a 4/6 that you can play out on curve is fine. Being able to look at cards in your opponent's life and seeing what they get, I think is in a really good spot. So all 3 of them running it, I think, just kind of guarantees in my mind that it should be run if at a high level. We also do see like 2 copies of Charlotte Cracker, and specifically the Matheos list, which I'm okay with this card existing. I don't know my feelings about it outright, but sometimes my opponent will play it and I just feel like I am way behind, and it's really hard to come back from it. We do see this version too from Matheos not running a 7-drop Big Mom, which I'm not like the largest fan of that card in the deck. I run it usually at 1 at max if I'm feeling it. I do kind of like Enel in the slot a little bit better, just because obviously it's findable from Shura, but being able to pressure cards and board, it's also just can win you the game late game. I feel like 7-drop Big Mom is only good if you play it at exactly 7 or 8 Dawn, and without a way to hard find this card in these builds, it's less good, but it's not a bad card. I don't think it's the worst card, it's just not a card that I run in my builds for it either. But and then also I think most of these were playing 3 copies of Katakuri except for Jimmy's, but 3 was the number I was running. I know a lot of people were saying, oh, you have to run 4 with Katakuri. You can run 3 of this card. I know this card's still expensive. If you only have 2, you're fine. Try to get to at least 3, but I think 2 is like the minimum you need for it. But there it is. And then also a couple copies of El Thor across them, either 0 copies, 1 copy, or 2 copies. I really like the card at 2 copies. Finding the space for it's very tough, but I do think being able to run 1 and 2, sometimes it just saves your Yamato from getting KO'd, and then that kind of wins you the game on the spot too. So other than that, I think they're kind of understood what these look like. these are kind of like what I've decided mine have looked like too. They've been very similar to all three of these, and you can see all the kind of the different individual choices, which makes sense for a deck like this, but kind of all converging to a similar list. So congratulations to Donut, Matheos, and Jimmy for their finishes there. And then lastly, we have the Big Mom Pirates version. This is Thomas's top 32 finish with it, and I haven't played a lot of the Big Mom version of Enel in a minute. I did at release, and I thought it was the better build, and then someone told me to try Sky Island, and I played that, and that's been more popular in my mind and just stronger in general. But I do occasionally get people say, why are you playing Sky Island? Big Mom's the better. Everyone's wrong. This is the way to play the deck. And I think I need to give it another shake and give it a try. There are a lot of good things for the deck, being able to have the one drop pudding to help us find the Linlin and the Katakuri. Parasparrow also finds Linlin and Katakuri. So just having 6 copies of searchable cards from our 8 copies of searchers is pretty good for the deck. And obviously Yamato there. So I think that's not terrible for it. But it's different. And it's more of with Sky Island, if you're playing the Omen Holy pack, which all 3 of them were, being able to go wider on the board is fantastic. This version, focuses more on going taller and getting value from that, which is good. I think specifically in the mirror match, Big Mom usually beats out the Sky Island version of it. But I don't know. There's pluses and minuses from both. I still personally like the Sky Island version a little bit more, but I think I do need to give it another shot to see what I think about it. So, but big congrats to Thomas for their top 32 there. And then lastly, we have 3 unique decks from the top 64. First, we have Rafael with their Newgate. And nothing too fancy with this one. This is obviously the Straw Hat Aggression version. We run a good amount of rush cards with 3 Luffys, 7 of the Ace, and then also the Edward Newgate. Interesting that there's no copies of specifically. I guess it is the Straw Hat, so no copies of Izo. I do like the addition of Vista. I think this is a really good card for specifically getting rid of, again, Rebecca, one of the most prevalent cards in this game. So being able to play 3 to get rid of their 4 cost blockers, fine. And then also this gives us enough time to, we can still rush with Ace if we need to. We have our Newgate, or just the value you get from that Vista, I think is good. Obviously, you can combo it with Otama to get stuff into range, but I like the idea of the card. I don't know if Nico Robin's just better because you do get to still search it from the Nami and get the bonuses from it, but you got top 64, so Vista must definitely be the card you need for it. So other than that, we also are playing the 1-drop Nami for additional Dawn throughout the turn. Which is interesting. I think this is as removable as ever, but if it sticks on the board, you do get that additional value, which is great. Having a free 7k leader every turn is pretty menacing in a lot of situations. And then 4 Zoros, 3 Luffys, 4 of the Ace, 4 big Newgates, and then a 3-3-2 split, which it's interesting to see 3 Rad Beams and 2 guard points instead of a 4-1, but again, they made it work. They got top 64. And it is an interesting combination of these guys as well. So obviously guard points better turn 1 and 2 if you want to keep your Zoro that you attacked with first out. But other than that, I think Rad Beam's pretty good, especially since again you can set yourself to 2 life very, very quickly. So that's all I have for this one. Congratulations to Rafael for their finish with the Newgate. And then next up we have Star Deck 10 Trafalgar Law, which one of these sneaks into Top Cut every once in a while. It's a deck that I thought was going to be way better in release, and I still think the deck is good, but it's a little bit complex, and without a lot of good ways to search and gain value. This is just a tempo deck that really depends on, the top card of their deck, I feel a lot of time, and that consistency is not always there. So you are good at just generating a lot of 5 cost or 5Ks that keep attacking. There's not a lot of 6k leaders right now. We have the 1 Newgate that snuck into the top. So you also have the red-purple Luffy we'll look at in a little bit, but you're fine for that. We do try to continue our consistency with having 4 copies of When You're at Sea, You Fight Pirates, which does look at top 3 for pretty much most of these cards, and most of them, there's just few cards that aren't found, like Gordon and the Ulti Page 1 combo, which I do like Ulti Page 1 in this deck. Being able to, you lose Dawn -4, which is a little bit expensive, but being able to put out 2 bodies is great. The only issue is that obviously neither of these are searchable, but that helps there. And then we play the 3-drop Trafalgar Law, which, again, I wish this could find better cards sometimes, but it's just okay. and then the 5-drop useless kid, which I don't think you guys need to know. This card is really good. I specifically like it in this leader too because it makes it like the cost of the leader not even rough. It's sometimes difficult to get to 5 Dawn in the first place to start using this effect. Start using your leader effect. But you have to kind of delay a turn from using it. But after that, you feel really good with this card, continually established. So I think it's a good call. So not much more from them there. Congratulations to Marco for their finish with Law. And to wrap it up, we do have Christos with their top 64 red purple Luffy. And this is the deck that I wish I could feel confident with. Sometimes you just feel like you are in control, you're in a good spot. 10-drop Luffy is such a fun card to drop down and push your game, especially with giving it like Diaby Jambe so they literally can't defend it. I think it's like in a really good spot when you're able to see your pieces and just kind of go from there. But you're not always there. Again, you kind of have some consistency, and again, you are a 3-life leader, which is very scary in a lot of ways. I don't know if they could have made this a 4-life leader, probably not, but having it 3 life is just so stinky at times. But being able to get to Newgate is great. Being able to have this 10-drop to go for it. You do have like a lot of great cards available to you as well. I like the 5-drop Luffy for you, the Zoro to help get the ramp for you, and then also the Khalifa. This is a really personalized build, which is really cool. Just you see a lot of 1s and 2s to kind of help us get there. But I don't have much more to say. The deck is a little bit linear on, trying to get to as much Dawn as possible, as fast as possible, and then drop your big bad boys of Newgate and Luffy. Having an 8K leader is pretty good, believe it or not. And again, we see it in this one. We saw it in the purple Luffy that got top 8. 7-drop Kid is really tempting, but for the removal that exists in this game, I just feel like it gets removed or answered pretty quickly, and most decks can find a way to get around it, so it's not usually all the way useful there. But that is going to kind of wrap it up for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And again, all the deck lists are on my website that I have right now. I'll continue to update them as I get more of them. Shouts to Raid and Trade for running the event and also posting top 16, and Orange Samurai for posting the rest of these deck lists that I've been able to populate my website with on their Twitter too. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to say hi if you see me at the North American Finals, and I'll catch you all next time.